bad transition defense, which can frustrate Kerr, lack of, physical rebounding, nights where he's kind of jogging up and down the floor and floating to the corner because when he doesn't feel that backing, has a mindset of like, all right, y'all just want me to, get out here and, not make a mistake because you're going to pull me if I make a mistake. So let me float to the corner. And again, I think that showed itself again at the end of his fourth season where they put him, in my opinion, in a very tough spot during the Rocket series. After pulling him, there was a couple times they had to plug him in, right? Remember, Jimmy Butler misses game 3 at home and they start him after keeping him out of the rotation. He played 11 minutes. He played hard. He made some mistakes. He'd been on ice. And then game 7, remember they lose the 3-1 lead. It's 3-3. He had a couple bad moments in game 7, but that was like a really kind of difficult environment to be thrown in. And, with Jimmy Butler there, which goes back to your earlier point about like the full cast, particularly the Jimmy Butler, Steph Curry, Draymond Green full cast, it is kind of a misfit. But he would flip it, and you can flip the mindset where it goes, okay, Steph Curry tweaks a hamstring, and all the guys that you could say the Guy Santoses of the world who might play better as a 4th or 5th guy in the lineup and might, help get a hustle rebound and get back in transition and do that type of stuff. Well, guess what? With Steph Curry strains a hamstring, you can't go, hey, all right, take the ball, take Naz Reid off the dribble, score 20 tonight. Right. And it's like, well, that's valuable. And that will be valuable next season, won't it? I mean, let's say Al Horford is in tow, and clearly that's the Warriors' plan. We'll see if it's executed. But that would make 4 of their starters 35, 35, 37, 39. Al Horford doesn't play back-to-backs. We know some of the injury and the I don't want to say coasting that some of the other stars do, but you throttle up and throttle back during the regular season. They're going to need scoring. They're going to need athleticism. They're going to need pop during an 82-game regular season. And I think lost in a lot of what's going on right now with Kuminga is people aren't talking about how much I believe in a lot of people, including some in the Warriors, front office, even some in the team believe he is needed at times. Will he be potentially minimized and benched in game 5, game 6 of the second round? Sure. That could, again, it could happen. Steve Kerr, gets to a moment where he just needs like defense and hustle and this, and he goes away from him. But guess what? Jimmy Butler misses 2 weeks next season. You need to score. You need a 5th-year, 6'7" wing who's going to go to the rim, because there's other flaws on their roster that very much show themselves when one of their scorers is out.
They've also tried to trade him a couple of times that I'm aware of. They tried to trade him. They tried to trade him for Kevin Durant midway through this last season. They tried to trade him for Paul George last summer when they ended up not, the Clippers basically wouldn't agree to the trade. God knows how many other times he's been in discussions, but like at least 2 times to try to trade him for a star player. I'm sure there were discussions with him and Jimmy Butler. He ended up not being in that deal. Obviously, ended up being Wiggins, the big name in the deal. But
the Durant trade, trade. This deadline's very important here because you go back to last summer, and there's a lot of even angst now, I'd say, about like he was extension eligible last summer, right? And it doesn't get done. Part of the reason it doesn't get done, and sure, the way it's been put to me is there was never any offers on the table. There was some dancing around of like,
the word, as the word offer is a tough word for media to use, whether it's trade or contract or, offering a job to a head coach. The word offer is a difficult word. I think I know, like with my editors, they'll be like, well, didn't they offer it? I'm like, well, hold on. Just be careful using the word offer, because when you use the word offer, you kind of got to defend it. And there's this language game that's played. So I understand what you're saying.
Yes. So what's important there, though, is part of the reason that the Warriors were hesitant to extend Kuminga last summer. And, while numbers were discussed, and I think Jalen Johnson getting 5 years, 150 gave a target that obviously Kuminga and their his representation, they had ambitious thoughts about what it could be. I'm of the belief, and I've been told, that they would have taken 5 for 150 if it was ever on the table. It wasn't on the table, and part of the reason the Warriors didn't necessarily want to put an offer on the table and never actually did put a firm, sign on the dotted line type offer on the table is because it would have poison pilled his contract, and they were very much in flexibility mode because they wanted to be able to trade him. And if you sign him to that deal, he's nearly impossible to trade last season. And as you mentioned, they almost traded him for Kevin Durant, which, by the way, I think the Warriors, you could argue whether it's better that they got Butler or Durant, but I'll tell you where Jonathan Kuminga wouldn't mind being right now, an extended member of the Phoenix Suns, but
which was probably their plan if they had gotten that deal done. And let me just say that when it comes to poison pill, just so our listeners know what that is, because it's a little bit of an obscure reference.
Yeah.
If you have signed a contract, if you're in your rookie deal, and you're in your third year, you're going into your fourth year, and you sign a contract, you become much harder to trade. I'm not going to get into the chapter and verse of it because I'm afraid I'll make a mistake and then I'll have to retract something, and Bobby Marks will have to answer for me. But you become harder to trade. But by the way, isn't that also an issue for this year? Not so much the poison pill, but
base year compensation, another terrific CBA term that everyone has to go to their dictionary and look up.
Yeah, but just in general, even if they sign him, I think there's a possibility, as they're negotiating, I'm not saying they would announce this, but as they're negotiating, they're thinking, we want to sign to a contract that we might be able to trade.
I feel comfortable saying both sides, as they're working through this right now, are discussing the idea of having, tradable contracts with the understanding that if you have to have him to at least January 15th, which you would if you sign the contract, he could bust out and be a 22 point per game scorer that they don't want to trade. Situations changed in the league, as and certainly situations can change into January. But I think both sides are comfortable if a deal is eventually done, which I think the qualifying offer's on the table. I think
which is $8 million, right?
Yeah, 7.9. I think a drawn out process that ends several ways is still on the table. But if a compromise contract, I've been calling it, happens, that is definitely going to be with the understanding that it possibly could get traded come January, February.
So, and if you take just for the listeners, if you take the qualifying offer, it means that you get a no trade clause automatically.
Yep.
For reasons I won't get into. If you get traded, you lose your bird rights. That's why you get a no trade clause. Complicated. You lose the potential to re-sign with your team, basically, and basically you destroy your relationship. There's been a few cases, and first off, qualifying offers are relatively rare, and even more rare are guys who take the qualifying offer and then stay with their team long term. I have maybe seen it 2 or 3 times in 23 years, where a guy. First off, I have only seen a couple dozen qualifying offers. That's pretty rare. Anyway, the reason I wanted to go over all this is because when I have Q&As on social media, which I do this time of year, I get a ton of questions about Jonathan Kuminga. There's a lot of Warriors fans out there.
Entering his 17th season, and he sat down with Complex, talked about how much longer he plans on playing. Take a listen.
I do know I'm kind of just taking it in 2-year chunks, just to know, you have to give yourself something and some motivation to kind of go after. For us, I talked to all the guys who have been in this situation where they've extended their prime, and there are more ungraceful endings than there are, I tip the cap and that type of thing. And I just want to be in a position where I've accomplished, or I put myself in a position where I can say I've done everything I can to, get everything out of this game, and hopefully I have, my health and the choice to say I'm
hanging
good.
It up.
I'm good. I'm not nowhere close to that though.
For sure. So we got some more years from you.
For sure.
Oh, man. Well, Steph fans will love that. The rest of the Western Conference, maybe not so much. Welcome to NBA Today. I'm Vanessa Richardson, and of course, from Malika Andrews. Joined here today in our LA studios, we've got senior writers Ramona Shelburne, Tim Bontemps, and we are also joined by Anscape's David Dennis Jr. DDJ, you've been around Curry for over 20 years. What does Steph's last stretch of his career look like?
So here are 2 things I could say about what the end of Steph Curry's career is going to look like. That'll sort of be a testament to the greatness that I expect. One is, no matter if this is 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the line, when Steph Curry gets hot in a given quarter, it'll always be the greatest show in basketball, maybe the greatest show in sports. It'll be something that people will always be calling about and saying, hey, Steph is catching fire and he's raining threes, no matter when that happens in his career. The other thing is that at the very last game, important game that he plays, again, whether it's 3 years, 4 years, whatever, when he crosses half court, he's going to get double teamed because he will always be a guy who's all that stuff, so he doesn't have to worry about that falling by the wayside. The shot will be there, the ball movement will be there, and he will be somebody who will be part of a team that can be at least making noise in the playoffs just by virtue of having him on that team.
You hear David saying 3 years, 4 years. Tim, Steph turns 38 in March. So how can the Warriors maximize the rest of his career?
I mean, I think it's what they've been doing, right? They traded for Jimmy Butler last year. They've gone out and tried to get, talked about getting LeBron James and obviously some things that are more fantasy trades than real trades in the past, and they've made other moves to try to get better. We'll see what happens the rest of the summer once they get the Jonathan Kuminga situation sorted out. I think it's likely that Al Horford winds up there. DeAnthony Melton, who was there last year before he tore his ACL, could wind up there too. The Warriors are going to try to straddle a couple things, right? If they can get a move where they can go all in to get another star at some point, I'm sure they'll try to do that. Joe Lacob and Mike Dunleavy in the Warriors front office has always been extraordinarily aggressive in trying to maximize how good this team can be. But Steph Curry also understands, as he said there, that he has chosen to finish his career with the Warriors. He wants to play his whole career there, as he should. And so the goal is for everybody involved to try to have the Warriors be as good as they can be for the rest of Steph's career, and for Steph to finish his career as a one-team player and go down like Tim Duncan and Kobe Bryant and Dirk Nowitzki and some of these all-time great players who have I think the special way their career played out, where they get to win a title and spend their whole career playing for one franchise.
He said, I'm going to take this in 2-year increments. And I think what's great that happened last year when they traded for Jimmy Butler is they finally have clarity now. This is what they're doing. They're maximizing the Steph Curry next 2 years. But he also said, I can see myself playing for 3 or 4 years. And so I don't know what happens after those 2 years, but I do know they have picked a lane. There was this 2-timeline era for a while. They were kind of trying to bring along Kuminga and some of those other young guys and say, you guys are going to be the torch, you're going to pass the torch to those. That's not happening anymore. This is now Steph Curry's all in. We're just going to keep making trades and trying to maximize these 2 years. Steve Kerr was lined up with him. Jimmy's lined up with him. Draymond Green's lined up.
Yeah, all the veterans.
So